All right, man. I think we're live.
Right.
Ready to go.
Perfect.
I'm going to turn it off. Who wants to listen to that music?
Some good lounge shit right there.
So, hey, man, like, we're finally talking. We're talking live. And
Your
we used
ears.
we used to have conversations before over Facebook, and I met you, sort of meet you quite a while ago, but I never actually had a time or ability to really have a conversation with you in the form of podcast or just even just a conversation. So I'm really glad having you.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah, I've heard about you for the longest while, and I've been always a fan of your work, and I know the amount of awesome work you also did at Art Center. I know I think some of my friends, uh, also your students, I believe. Um,
Yeah, and
so that's
some instructors too. I think right. Between
yeah,
like Shaddy had taught for me and Jamie Jones and bunch of
yeah,
great guys. Yeah,
awesome
James
people,
Bay.
awesome
Yeah, for
people.
sure.
I mean, let's start with just like introducing yourself, because some people, I guess most of the people that are watching us already know who you are. But whoever stumbles upon this video or this stream, like, what they're talking about? Who is
Yeah.
this?
Well,
um,
I'm Tim Flattery. I'm one of the old guys now. We've thought that. I've been a concept artist for 29 years now. I started in 1987, and
wow.
yeah, my first movie was My Stepmom's an Alien with Kim Basinger and Dan Aykroyd, and then
Okay.
I did Back to the Future 2 right after that, and then from there Total Recall. It took a while, but got my feet on the ground a few years after that. It was a lot different back then than it is now.
Oh, I can imagine.
Getting
We
into the
obviously can talk
guild, all
about
that
it.
shit. Yeah.
Um, Dude, you pretty much started when you started working in film when I stopped shitting my diapers. That's basically the the age difference we're at right now. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's
One of
funny.
the old guys. One of the old guys.
Yeah, I feel like I'm old, but I've been in this. I mean, I've been in video games mostly throughout most of my career. Um, it's been like 12 years now. I feel old because I see like all
Yeah.
those artists on ArtStation and on Facebook. Like, damn, those young guys, they're already killing it. Now, like when I'm talking to you, or when I was talking to Scott Robertson, or even talking with Paul Osimo, I'm pretty sure you know him. Uh,
Oh yeah.
it's
A
like,
long
damn,
way.
you guys have a history. So,
Yeah, Paul and I go a long way back where when he first started out, he was he built models and
yeah.
miniatures. He's an amazing, just got an incredible craft skills when it came to doing miniatures, full on stepper motor miniatures and all that. And he transitioned that into concept design
Hmm.
because he could draw and a lot of it was self taught, and a lot of it was just studying other people.
Yeah.
And now he's like, his shit's awesome, as you
Yeah,
know.
he told me some most interesting stories, and like his transition and the stuff they were pulling off when he was in the model shop, and some
Oh yeah.
bizarre things that today, if they would try to do it, it would be lawsuits flying everywhere.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we had good stories. He did the miniature of my Batmobile for me in the while we were doing the full
Nice.
size. He was doing the miniature of it in the shop with us, and
Damn.
yeah, and amongst a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, so whenever we end up working on a movie together and we're in the art department together, we always talk about the remember back
So
in the shops and blah blah. Blah. Yeah.
yeah, damn. I wish I was there. I wish I was there, because the stories I'm hearing is like, damn,
Oh,
some fun stuff for
there were
sure.
good times. I mean, especially back in those days. Half the time when we're going out to lunch, we'd go out and get fucking hammered and come back. You know, I think on Save It Private Ryan, we you know 3 out of the 5 days we'd come back drunk from lunch and did some great shit on that movie. But it's much different now for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it feels more organized for sure, and less sort of organic garage, if anything, in
Yeah,
the good and the bad way too, I guess.
yeah,
So I'm always
yeah.
curious. Whenever I'm talking with you or other, let's call it old school guys. I'm always curious, like, what actually got you into this industry? Because I know, like, right now, there's so much coverage of film and games, and it's so much more easier to get information, like how to get in, like, oh, actually, you could make money doing this. But back in the day, that was a different story, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I went to school at College for Creative Studies, and back then Sid Mead was a huge influence.
Hmm.
All the books from, like, the artwork of Star Wars, looking at Ralph McQuarrie and Joe Johnston's stuff and Neil Rodas. That was sort of what got me dialed in and excited about working in the film industry. And I didn't know anything about pre-production within the art department because I grew up in Detroit. So everything I knew was from books, which was Cinefex, and
Hmm.
so all I knew was visual effects. So from what I read out of books. So I kind of geared my own portfolio back in the '80s to, in my own naive way, what I thought would cater to the movie industry as opposed to just straight up industrial design, which is what I was going to school for.
Right.
And so you know how it is. You get bit by that bug, and there's just nothing that's going to stop you. And so
Yeah.
I just um, kept working on sort of a portfolio separately, and then I got support from a couple of my instructors at school. And when I graduated, I moved out to LA and sort of started knocking on doors at effects companies like Apogee, ILM, and DreamQuest, and Boss Films. These places that were doing all these great effects um, for the big motion pictures. And ended up working for John Dykstra at Apogee, which was originally Industrial Light and Magic when they did Star Wars down in Van Nuys. And they split off, went up to San Francisco and formed ILM, and John Dykstra stayed down in LA and formed Apogee, and he did the first Star Trek feature, just all
Hmm.
sorts of shit that they did there. And so he gave him my first job, him and Bob Shepard there at Apogee, and that's that was sort of my first sort of in, where I was working for them and meeting like all the guys that worked on Star Wars, and that actually led to um, working on My Stepmother's an Alien, and then somebody from that recommended me for Back to the Future, and so that's how I got started.
Yeah, it
Um,
snowballs from there.
yeah, and then it kind of snowballed from there, but it was just out of sort of pure passion for movies and design within movies, and just completely naive about how to go about it. Um, now people are so informed about what it is to get in the industry and what the industry is, and concept design. Concept design back then wasn't even a thing. We were called illustrators,
Right. Yeah.
and even though we were doing the same thing, and it's just evolved, over the last few decades. So in a way, I'm glad that I got in when I got in, but I'm envious of the people that are entering the business now, given the tools that they have and
Yeah.
how they go about it. Yeah. So, but
It's
that's a long-winded way of how I kind of broke in, and I was just always a nut for it. I was a comic book geek, growing up, and a sci-fi geek as a kid, and it just translated into my art.
that's awesome. Yeah, I mean it's completely different right now. Um, I think it was, unless you were exposed to, I guess it's hard for me to tell or figure it out because it's also, I guess, different for US and Europe. I originally come from Poland, so
Right.
I'm like from pretty much behind the Iron Curtain. The time I was born, we were still under Soviet influence.
Yeah.
My country was, at least. So it's sort of like this stigma of like just not knowing what the hell is going on in the West. Like
Right.
it all of a sudden started pouring in. I think it's '89 when the Berlin Wall came down,
Mm-hmm.
and then slowly but surely, like the Western culture started pouring in, and I think up until teenage times, I didn't even know what Spider-Man is. So, uh,
Right. Right.
um, but it seems to me that apart from maybe knowing, okay, there is an industry that makes films, and obviously, you know, damn, I want to work in films. There wasn't really much information out there, like what to do. It was all just basically relying on books, I guess. And
It's being in Poland, you mean?
no, I mean, in your situation when
Oh,
you
for me.
were, yeah. Right now it's so different, isn't it? Like it's just everything is everywhere, and
Well, I think about it all the time. Because I keep telling myself, well, shit, I should, post more stuff. I should be doing, because that seems to be a thing in itself. Just ArtStation and all the, how everybody networks with each other and influences each other, and I think it's awesome. We were in such a closet all through the 80s and 90s where you were influenced by just the guys that you were working on a movie with or books that from established guys.
mhm.
And now it's information and networking is so readily available. It's pretty awesome and intimidating at the same time. I I don't have the time to do all that shit. I think I heard somebody say, maybe it was, I forget, maybe it was James Paik saying that it's like a full-time job, just you know posting stuff constantly, and
Yeah,
that he spends, he has to spend a lot of time doing that. And between chairing an department at CCS and working on Avengers and whatever, I don't know how you guys do it, because I know that you're like 3 times as busy as I am. I know you're always doing 3 projects
I don't
at
have
once,
life
and
though.
neither do I. And it's like, how do you guys fucking, you know, and you look at John Bach and Fausto, those guys, every day they're doing a painting at lunch. It's like, take a fucking vacation. What are you guys doing over there? Gee,
Well, blame John Park for it because
it's John.
he's just such a beast, man. That guy is just like, I haven't seen anyone who influence others as John Park does,
No
because
shit.
he is usually the person that starts all of it. Like, oh,
Yeah.
let's draw, and it's like everyone like, okay, just keep drawing, and then everyone sees what he does, like, fuck, now I have to do it,
And then they got to do it.
and then I
Yeah.
got to do
Exactly.
it. So as long as
Yeah.
he's posting, oh, I'm tired, but I'm still gonna do it.
He's insane.
No, the
Yeah.
group that they have there right now is just like, oh my god, it's amazing people
I know.
over at Lightstorm. So they've managed
Oh,
to get like a really nice pack of wolves, I would say. Um,
yeah, totally. It's fun to see when Dylan jumps into those things, or Ben Proctor, and
yeah,
I
exactly. Like
love.
those guys never have time for anything,
No,
and then all of a sudden they come out of the closet.
but I think you're right. I mean, that's the John Park, you know, um, whatever you want to call it. He's that love for that stuff's infectious.
Yeah. Was he one of your students?
No, he was one of Scott's, I think,
Yeah, yeah.
and but he did teach for me
Okay.
for before, it was right before they started Brainstorm.
Mm-hmm. A
Um, so um,
couple of years
I
ago.
yeah, a few years back. So yeah, all those guys, they're monsters, and yet they're they're humble and fun to be around, and are
Yeah, it's awesome
living their
crew.
lives. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
it's one of those. he's one of the younger guys, I guess. I mean, he's pretty much my age, but considered in film it's considered young guys. And he's just a lot of power. He's just like, when you talk with him, there's no way you are not gonna be inspired. There's just no way.
Yeah,
So
right. So that was something I wanted to ask you too, because you do both. What do you enjoy more, working on a game or working on a film? Since you spent so much time on Ghost in the Shell, and you
um
got Monte there.
I'll tell you this. I don't know. I mean, both can have some good and bad things about it.
Yep.
I think the best part about film, which I haven't been in film for long enough, but from my experience that I had so far, is it's much more focused. Like, you kind of get the idea, right? We're starting this. There's a production. There's a pre-production. You make sure that the sets are all laid out and built and everything before it goes filming. And it's a very straightforward process. You know what you have to do.
Yeah.
Everything is planned. There's no misunderstanding on what's what. Obviously, script changes affect everything, but
Right.
at the end of the day, you talk with one person. Usually it's a production designer. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you're gonna work with director directly,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is even better. But it's usually one person you talk with, and then you just hang out with other artists, and that's pretty much it. There's no bullshit or whatsoever. Whereas
Yeah.
in games, it's just games have much longer production cycle. They in film, how long you gonna work in film on the particular project? It's gonna be anywhere between a couple of months to a year, right? In
Or
most cases, it's a
sometimes,
few
I mean,
months, right? Or even a few
well,
weeks.
yeah. Or yeah, I mean, in some cases I've been worked on. It's been a couple weeks. So
Yeah, yeah. So it's much shorter, it's much more compact and much more focused. At the same time, it's, I guess, way more stressful, because it's just like the tempo and how much stuff you have to produce really is because it's way organized, and how much is at stake because of the shorter production cycle. You have to be prepared for much more work, basically. The rewards are
in
better.
film, you're
Yeah, yeah.
saying. Okay. Yeah.
Whereas in games, in games you're just part of. I mean, in film you are a part of like a really really small part of a crew. Really, I mean, you have thousands of people making films, um, but I think games are more forgiving in terms of work than film, because like if you illustrate something, it affects the way it's built, right?
Yeah.
If you fuck it up, then they're gonna have hard time to figure out like how to even build it,
Yeah. It's got to be tangible.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas in games, it's just like, because everything is digital, it's kind of like, yeah, you can do whatever almost.
Right.
Whether it's gonna work well in the game or not, it's not gonna be as significant, because usually what you design, like one part you're designing, is just a small part of the game, and the game itself is just so vast. There's so much more to it, like AI and animation and sound and acting and game design and mechanics. Like, there's just so much packed in that
Yeah.
your helmet design or vehicle design is like, it's really not that significant of an impact to what the game is going to be. And also, production cycle is so long that you have much more time to get things done. And if you fail, it's like, all right, well, I failed. Let's move on. I mean, it depends obviously on the game you're working on, and also on the studio you're in. There are studios where you can kind of fuck around, and
Yeah.
you're gonna slip by, and there are studios where you really have to crunch. There's obviously rewards and risks around it, but I would say games are more forgiving, and they're also, because there's so much involved in terms of what the game is going to be. It's much more political too, because now you have to work with designers, game designers, and guys who create mechanics and level designers and other artists that build stuff. Like, imagine you in film, you would have to talk with you talk with set designers, right? That's pretty standard, but like, imagine now all of a sudden you have to talk with the whole production and VFX as well in order to actually finish your illustration. You would go mad, man.
Yeah.
So in those terms, it can be really annoying, because you might have weeks where it's going to be so many meetings. You're just going to be pulling your hair out. Like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting in those useless meetings and listening to people and their egos. There's a lot of egos involved as well. I think there's more ego in games than in film for sure. Um,
Yeah. Oh, in there's more ego in games than film,
oh
or in
yeah,
film.
I would say in games.
Oh no shit.
Yeah, man. In
That's a
films, I don't know. I mean, you're gonna have some characters here and there in film, but generally, you kind of, you can get by pretty much anyone when you work on a show, right? I mean, there's really rare you're gonna work with an asshole that you just cannot bear with. It happens, but it's not like it's not like a common thing. You're gonna have one or two guys, and because the industry is so small, they get weed out really quickly. In let's say most cases,
right.
not always. Some characters kind of linger around for way
Yeah.
too long.
There's
But it's
always an
such a
ass.
small industry, man. Like that was surprising to me because once I started on Ghost in the Shell, and then I went to Captain America, and after working on those two, I pretty much knew half of the industry, man.
It's funny because it was a hell of a lot smaller,
That's what I
a
hear.
while. Yeah, I think like when I got into the guild, I don't know, I think there was like 58 guys in there, and now there's over 300. And so you talk about small, it was really small.
Yeah.
And but all the things that you're talking about in comparison from game to film, it just reminds me of how much things have changed, because for so long, well, first of all, on a film, it's kind of like, they own you when you're on it. And that's just their attitude as far as, your time and how fast you have to be. And so, that there's a little bit of frustration there, because when I hear that you have time on a game to work through things, like on a film, a lot of times you don't have the time to do an illustration to the level that you'd like to do, because it's
Right.
got to, no, we got to show the director tomorrow. But the other part too was that, for so long, I supervised the construction of stuff I designed, right? Like, specialty things like the Batmobile
Mm-hmm.
or other vehicles, or even Turbo Man for Jingle All the Way, and doing that suit and babysitting Arnold on set. And, in that case, you are dealing with everybody from, not just actors, but obviously the director,
Right.
costume people, construction, special effects, visual effects. Because when let's say you take the Batmobile, for instance, you're dealing with, special effects, because there are stunts and rigs and things like that have to go into what you're designing,
Mm-hmm.
that you have to build in, and visual effects, because obviously there's going to be effects, miniatures, things like that with what you're doing, and everything from costume, because it's I don't know if you saw the documentary, but you can close the canopy and you close it on Batman's ears because you didn't set the seat height the right height, shit like that. So yeah, you're working with costume to build a cowl that has shorter ears when he's driving that thing around, shit like that. And you're right, that was it was taxing and exhausting at the same time, and being on set was exhausting. And it got to the point, as things changed in the industry and how budgets changed, and um, I just stopped supervising because it wasn't worth it anymore. I was like, I'll
Right.
design the stuff, but and so I just sort of stopped building my stuff and babysitting on set, and I'm happier for it. Somebody once told me, you never want studio executives to know your name, and and
That's
and
interesting.
oh man, it's fucking true, because as soon as they know who you are, like, when you're dealing with budgets and stuff, and there's, or there's something that they have big plans on merchandising for, and you're responsible for it, you don't want them to know who you are, because
Hmm.
then the bullseye's on you, and that's not fun.
I can
So
imagine.
yeah, so I hear what you're saying about game, and it sounds that, I mean, that just sounds inviting to have a couple years to work on things. That, you know, the collaboration that you're talking about sounds great. Um,
Yeah, if you're with the good people, like good studio where there are professionals around you, the people that are working with you are mostly driven by the fact that they want to create a great product,
yeah,
then it can be a blast to work in the games.
right.
What often happens is that when you join a video game studio, I know it from my own experience because I felt like that for a while as well. I'm not gonna lie, I've learned from my own mistakes. Is that
Yeah,
when you join a really good studio and you almost feel like yeah, I made it.
right.
Um, your ego gets boosted sometimes to the levels where it's just like, man, like the fuck, just calm
Yeah,
down. You're not
yeah.
the most important person in this place. And what happens is that even though you're trying to produce the best art possible or best animation or whatever that is, you tend to also have a really strong opinion about what you do,
Yeah,
and then someone else can come in and will have a strong opinion about what are you doing as well.
exactly.
And that's where the conflict starts, and then those long meetings where you just have to sort of like sort out, you're like, oh my god, why a designer? And the designer in video games has nothing to do with with what designer is in film or what even design means.
Right.
It's more of a, if it's a level design, it's really just layout of a level, or combining sort of like the gameplay elements and mechanics into what art
Okay.
can be. A lot of those people have no experience in art whatsoever. If you're lucky enough to work with someone who understands architecture or geology, or just even art in general, then you're lucky, because like
Uh,
whatever you create, it's gonna be all right. I mean, he knows how to put it together, and it's gonna look good. Sometimes, I mean, I remember working on games where, let's say, the concept team would design some buildings and we would design the layout of a city, and all of a sudden you would have, like, let's say you would have a road, and then right in the middle of an asphalt road you would have a big fucking rock sitting right in the middle, and like, wait a minute, like, what's going on here? Like, why the rock is in the middle? And the designer would say, um, we need a cover object because AI
oh,
only
Jesus.
AI only reaches like 20 feet, and then they get stupid because that's how the game mechanics work. There's just how much calculation can be done. So
Yeah,
we need some cover objects so that your enemies can hide, or you can hide from your
right.
enemies. Well, then why not making two rocks on the side of the road instead of one in the middle? No, no, it has to be there.
Yeah,
And
why not
and
design into it? Yeah.
and then you're just like, oh my god. And that's, that kind of stuff gets you really tired. Just like this,
Yeah,
you feel it's like, you feel it's stupid, but on the other hand, like, if you just think it only through a perspective of, let's just ignoring logic and art and anything, just perspective of what's fun, that actually might be the best solution. Really, like, just
yeah.
having that rock there just makes this set piece like really fun to play, but damn, it looks stupid, man.
Well, it
So
it it's funny in like sort of the same scenario in film where you know, you can be working for a production designer who is very detail oriented,
hmm
and there can be a frustration on the opposite level where you know that you know this whatever this designer is focusing on will never be seen by the camera because it's in the back of the set in a corner that the camera's just going to pan
right.
by, and yet you'll spend, you know, countless hours and days on these details that, and then you have other designers that um, will design to the camera and to the shot and let everything else go, and then there's frustration in there too. So there's never
Yeah.
a, you know, there's never a happy medium. You know, I've worked for all those guys, and I've learned myself just in stuff that I've had to build myself, where to focus and where to put the money,
Yeah.
um, you know, on what the camera's going to see. So it sounds like there's similarities in the same types of frustrations, even though the job
Right.
description that you're talking about is very different.
I think it's less of that in film, because in film is just, if it's in if it's in there, it's still just almost one or two people that you're dealing with, you know. Whereas in game, it can be like six of them, because
Oh
one
yeah,
is in AI and one is in animation, and two in the game design, and like, and every
right.
time it's just like, oh man, just relax already, you know.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think it's film is more intense in terms of production, but I guess the final result seems to be more rewarding. Uh,
if it's good.
if it's good.
If
Uh,
it's bad, it's you know,
on the
it's
other hand, if you're you can be in a project in video games where it might be a nightmare to work for, but it turns out to be an amazing thing. I actually have noticed that, I don't know if what's your experience, but it seems that the hardest projects that cause the most frustration usually end up to be really good films. Whereas the projects that are like, oh man, I had a blast. It was one of the most amazing thing I worked on, and you look at a final, you know, cut in the theater, it's like, what the fuck am I
what
watching?
was that? Oh yeah, what the hell was that? And
Yeah.
it's funny because you know, and even when you can, I worked on plenty of movies where I've read the script, and it's like I was excited to see the movie, and
Yeah.
by the time it hit the screen, it was like, what is that? That's not what I
What
read.
happened?
What happened? Or just the opposite, where you read the script, and I remember on Solaris, they called me up and sent the script out, and I was on a plane. I read it on the plane, and when I landed, they called and they said, "What'd you think?" And I said, I'd seen the Russian movie, and I was like, I don't know. So I have no idea what to think. And they were like, yeah, exactly. and, but all I know is it was like the best time I had designing all this shit. And when the movie came out, I was blown away.
Hmm.
So it's funny when you have sort of the nice surprise. And so
Yeah,
I've
it's
learned
definitely
I've learned
fun.
not to yeah I've learned not to I don't make any like Avengers. It goes just like any other movie. It's going through, there's draft after draft and rewrite after rewrite,
Yep.
and it's like, God, man, all I know is Marvel tells good stories, and I love watching their movies.
Hmm.
Um, but again, like I said, I'm a comic book nut, so I love that shit.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, in most cases, it's just like usually what you read at the very beginning. If you're even lucky to actually get hands on a script, I've noticed it's like less and less frequent these days to actually production have access to scripts. But
that's crazy to
yeah, it's
me.
kind of weird. Um,
Or
I've
every
worked on,
page is watermarked. Yeah,
yeah, like if you lose it, you're fucked. Like if it
yeah.
leaks, it has your name on it, you're
Oh
fucked.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um, but what I was saying is, I think I worked on like 2 or 3 films already that I didn't even know what they were about. Like literally
Right. Yeah.
designed this thing is like, context, please.
Yeah. Tell me what
Yeah,
I'm doing.
tell me what I'm doing. No, just design it. Like, oh my god, like what is going on?
Yeah.
Um, it's funny. It's actually this paranoid thing where they will like guard you from having access to script and this and that. Is like, oh, the security, and you have to know what you do and this, and
Yeah.
but then you bring your own computer
Right. Right. I
uh,
know.
to the studio, and it's like, who the hell knows what you have on this? They're not checking it. So you just plug it to the internet, and they give you access to everything, and you can just do whatever the fuck you want, man.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so weird.
You just, you have to, you sign an NDA, and
Yeah.
the rest really is on good faith. But I know I've been on movies where, they kept the script in a safe, This was never the case. Everybody got their own copy of the script, and it was laying on your drawing board. And now, like, you have to go into a certain room, and the script's in a safe, and it's watermarked, and you've got 2 hours to read it. And if you're like me, I read like a fucking fourth grader. I can't get through 120 pages in 2 hours. It takes me 4 hours especially if I'm going to absorb it. And I just it sort of, so some of the security cracks me up that they go to these lengths where it's a script in a safe in a room, and you're monitored while you're reading it. And
Yeah, they
it's a
check
little
your
absurd.
retina, they check your
Yeah,
fingerprints, and
yeah, exactly.
you sign a contract with the devil. Yeah,
It's like getting the screeners. Are you getting the screeners now? Um, from
yeah, I do.
you're right.
That's the funniest thing. The movies, though. All right, so um, anyone who is in the union, basically, like, we get screeners, right?
Right,
The films that are, some of them are actually in cinemas right now.
right.
So it's like, what kind of stops you from? I mean, one of the reasons that you see screeners on torrent is this. I would be surprised if it's not the case. Just the fact that they're, they might be lost in the, by the post office or something like that, because they're just basically sending an envelope. Like, what is the security behind this?
I
I don't get it.
Well, so before they just used to send you the screener, and it would have a thing on there saying, you can't share this with anybody, you can't whatever. But now they have um, they have a digital watermark on each DVD
Hmm.
that's tied to you.
Okay.
So if it does, if for some reason it does get out, or you were to, lend it to somebody and they or whatever, it can be tied back to you now.
Okay. Well, that
So,
in that case it makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
it
it,
makes
it
more
didn't used
sense.
to be. It didn't used to be like that. But now, so when I don't know, you've started getting yours already. I'm assuming
Yeah.
because each individual screener is digitally watermarked to your name, so they can track it if it gets out.
Yeah.
And so I don't loan mine out, because I mean they're hardcore about it, man. They're like, you know,
Well, good. I mean, it would be a shame. I mean, it's a really lost money. I mean, when you look at how much effort goes into production and how much money it takes, and how many people are
yeah,
involved, it's just like, man, like, looking at piracy is just like,
yeah, yeah, it's crazy.
it's just like, pay a couple of bucks and go watch it, even if you don't like it.
Yeah,
It's still like, at least you're paying for work that is being done. And if at the end of the day you don't like it, then maybe next time you'll not watch the same director or same
well,
studio or whatever.
not
But
just that, but I mean there's nothing like going into a movie theater, with a
yeah,
box of popcorn, and watching a movie and having the experience in a
I
theater with
agree.
an audience.
I
It's the
agree with
big,
you. It's a
unless
different
it's,
experience for sure than just watching
yeah,
it on the screen. We usually don't pay attention. Like, you do some work and it's like on the other screen. It's like, yeah, I watched it.
yeah,
Haven't seen any frame because you were focused on the work.
yeah, yeah. That
uh,
happens all the time to me too.
yeah.
But yeah, so you mentioned, you talked about the egos in the game industry, and that you found the egos more prevalent in the game industry than the film
I would say
industry. So
so. Yeah, I would say so. It's
fascinating.
it's a little different too. I think um, it's more like, there are cases where it's just like purely ego, where it's like someone is envious.
Oh,
Um,
right,
but in most cases, it's usually, it's not mean spirited. It's usually like someone has an idea, and they think that they're doing the best thing, but they don't
right,
take into consideration that someone else might have a different opinion about it. And in essence, working like, whether it's a film or game, you're basically creating. It's a collaborative process, really.
right.
You're just
Yeah,
a part of it, and you have to accept that. And I think that's where it comes, where the problem comes. Like, people don't accept that idea. Um, It's
Well,
and
that's good to hear. It sounded like it was something because it's definitely something that I talk about when I teach, which is, leave your ego at the door because
yeah.
there's no room for it. We're in, this industry is, I don't care what arm of the industry, whether it's game or theme park or film or animation, it's a collaborative business.
Mm-hmm.
And, and you have to, you have to be okay with that. And you have to be okay with, um, somebody like, how many times have you worked on a whatever, like you may end up working over the top of someone else's work, or they're going to work over yours, or
Yeah.
stuff gets passed around, and that's just how it is. You just
Exactly. It is exactly like that. I mean, even on Ghost in the Shell, I would get stuff from Weta and
yeah,
we just have to change. Like, can you touch it up? Because like we need changes here and there. And
yeah,
it's not your concept really. Like you're just fixing it for a director, and vice
yeah,
versa. Like
yeah,
some of the work that I did for that show, I'm talking with some friends at Weta, and they're like, hey, I had to touch up your picture because of this and that, and yeah, it's fine. It is what it is. At the end of the day, what you should really care about is your own portfolio, like that you take home after you're done with the film. Whatever that's going to be at the end of the day, like what the film is going to end up being, whether you love it or hate it, your work kind of speaks for itself. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, you have to. There's there's art and design, and then there's the process,
yeah,
and
Wow.
to be a constructive part of the process, um, you can still, your art and your design can still cater to the process, but you can do it in a constructive way, or you can do it in a way that's selfish, and it doesn't. You end up getting a reputation that way.
hmm
And so, it was interesting to hear you bring that up, and that's why I wanted to ask you about it because. I, the egos do get prevalent in this business, and you know what? There's always someone better.
yeah,
I don't care how good you are. There's
yeah,
always someone better, man. You know how that goes,
yeah.
right? I mean, it's just like there's a lot of talent out there. So
Yeah, you go on that art station, or you just look at what John Park is doing. It's like, fuck yeah, all right.
not just what he's doing, but what he's doing in a half hour at lunch. It's like I'm next time I'm tomorrow, because they're all going to post tomorrow, and it'll be another fucking masterpiece. I'm going to tell those guys to take a vacation. They're killing me. When John Bach and I were working on Fantastic Voyage together, and we were watching Archer at lunch, for fuck's sake, and now he's like cranking on. I think I messaged him. I said, what happened to watching Archer? What is it with you guys, like painting every second of the day? When do you breathe? I can't keep up with them.
Yeah, I don't
It's
know.
pretty
Like,
awesome.
I wish I had energy to do it.
Well,
I'm
you
just
got
doing
kids
it.
now. That'll suck. That'll suck the energy out of you.
Yeah, for sure. That and a lot of other things that I have to do. I'm actually thinking about sabbatical personally, like getting a little
Oh
time
yeah.
off from anything, and maybe do a little like a part time, still sort of like keep up with what's going on, but have much more time for everything else. I think that's everyone needs that at some point. Sort of like whether you want to explore new ideas or anything like that. I'm really getting into idea of photogrammetry, or however you
Oh
call it,
no
where
shit. Yeah.
where you just photograph objects and stitch it together to actually create a meshes.
Yeah.
It's really exciting. It's really exciting what you can get out of this, and I really want to like get deeper into it, but you just cannot until you really have time to actually go out, because it's one of those things where it's only going to work when you go out, maybe do some travel, where you can
Yeah.
actually find a subject matter that is worth, uh, you know, photo shooting basically, because you go in and just make hundreds of photos from different angles, and that's how you create the asset. But that's something that is exciting to me because it becomes like this one of those things where it's really tied into 3D. A
Yep.
lot of the work that I do, I mean, you're doing it as well. I mean, you've been in film if in like forever, and I think you went through drawing and then Photoshop and then painting and then right now it's 3D mostly, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and you're right. Yeah, I did. I went through. Um, I mean, there was it was marker and gouache and acrylics um, for the first half of my career, and computers transitioned in,
Yeah.
and it took a while actually for them to transition in, and then once the software got to the point where it was definitely like, okay, this is just another tool as opposed to something you were trying to make work.
Mm-hmm.
Then it was all over. It was just like,
Yeah.
you were expected to know it, and then you were expected to work in Photoshop, and then the people that resisted it were taking it on. Like, there were some production designers that just didn't want to see a computer in the art department, and then once it became a tool, that changed, and then when 3D got introduced, that was the same process, and now we're just expected to know 3D as
Yeah.
concept guys. Um, Hell, I think on Avengers, that's all I'm doing is 3D. I mean,
Yeah.
for good reason. You hand off your assets, and it saves a lot of steps.
Yeah, it does. And now, like with the introduction of CAD software, like Fusion 360 or Moi 3D, we
Yeah.
can actually almost like manufacture those things, and it's so easy to build in that environment.
Oh
And then you
yeah.
just send it out, and well,
Boom.
we're just gonna print it.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why, like, I'm working in Lightwave here. People always ask what program, and it's like, it just doesn't matter because they all talk to each other, as
Yeah.
you export in whatever format. And so, but going back to what you said, because I was enamored by that, I just about taking a sabbatical and taking a break, and it's funny how important that is. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm taking a couple weeks and for Christmas, and I'm not going to stay home at Christmas. My wife and I we're taking off, man. We're going to go to Jackson Hole and ski and dog
Disappear
sled
from
and
internet and
and
everything.
disappear. Yeah, because you're right. You do burn out, and sometimes you don't even realize it when you're burning out. And that balance is really important. It's easy to lose that balance doing what we
Yeah.
do because we live like gypsies. It's from one job to the next, and you know, um, you don't say no very often. You just keep it going. And so when you get to the point where you're at, like what you talked about now, where you can take, hey, I'm going to take a certain amount of time off. That's awesome. That's huge. You're, you know, your work's going to benefit from it, and so is your family, and so are you.
Yeah, it's so tied together. Like when you're overworked or tired or working from project to project to project, it's just like, it's gonna be that time where you get that email or phone call, and like, oh, we're working on this, and you get excited. Fuck, I
Yeah,
want to work on that, and you say yes, and then a month later, it's like,
yeah.
it's the same.
It's the same. It's the same thing. We're working on the next best new thing, and it's like, oh my god, that I've always dreamed of working on that. And then a month later, it's like, fuck, what am I doing? What did I say? Yes, I got to learn to say no. I got to say
Yeah,
no. Yeah.
agree with you.
Yeah.
I want to jump into questions. There's a few of them, but before that, I had one question to you. What,
Yeah.
because you've been a head of chair in for entertainment design at Art Center, right?
Yeah.
How did you get in that place, and what was it like?
Um,
I'm always curious. Like Art Center, honestly, before you go, sorry, when I came to US, it was like, I probably should sign up for Art Center. I was already working at Naughty Dog. It was like, yeah, I should sign up. And then I was talking to Andrew Kim, who worked with me at Naughty Dog. He was Art Center graduate, and he's like, dude, you don't need it.
no. Yeah.
But I was
It's
always
funny.
obsessed about it because the work I've seen from you and Scott and everyone else who's just basically went through that place, just amazing.
Yeah. So I chaired there for a little over 5 years, um, and all right. So how do I do this without getting long-winded. I went to a different design school than Art Center. I went to here in Detroit. I went to College for Creative Studies, and it's the same. It's the same program. So, are you asking how did I start at Art Center? How did that come about? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, and like what actually got you to actually do that? You know, because you've been primarily in film, right?
Right. So that's a great question. I never had, I had plenty of opportunity to production design, and I never, it wasn't something that, I just like to design shit as a concept guy, right? And because, you know, a lot of production design ends up being the managerial stuff that we were talking about earlier. So I didn't have aspirations for that. I just had aspirations to do what I do. But, and I've done everything in my career that I've set out to do. And so at this point, when I work on a movie, it's for the sheer enjoyment of the design and the art that I do, as opposed to trying to make a mark to get my next movie, right? And so I started teaching at Art Center back in the 90s and really liked it a lot, and was good at it. In fact, I like teaching as much as I like designing and drawing, and had a strong passion for it as well. And out of the blue, when Scott Robertson left Art Center, one of the faculty members, who was a guy that I knew really well, good friends with, Ricardo Delgado, had sent me an email just saying, hey, you know, I don't know if you ever thought about this, but Scott left, this position's open, you'd make a really good chair. And I thought about it, and you know, so I talked to Scott and this and that, because the decision was, if I can do this and still do movies, I'm in, because then I got the best of both worlds. So I went ahead and, you know, submitted, and there was, you know, a bunch of candidates. They do like global searches for these positions, and then they whittled it down to 6, and then they whittled it down to 3, and then the position was offered to me. So I took it, and sure enough, you know, it's something that, it was like one of the best decisions I've made in my life. I just, you know, I love teaching, and I love being able to design a curriculum, just like, you know, designing anything else. And so from there, my kids are grown, and I'm just not an LA type of person. I never have been. And it's been my desire to always get back to Detroit. And so that's what I did. Because working on movies, as you know, we do. I haven't been in the studio for years. I've been, you know, I just do them remotely.
Yeah.
And my wife, you know, all of her time is in Atlanta because she's a graphic designer in the industry. So we have a long distance relationship anyway. So I went from Art Center to CCS, and miss Art Center a ton. That place is magical, and the students there are amazing. But you're also, you know, I feel the same way. It's like, do you have to go to Art Center to become a concept designer? No. Could you go and learn from John Park at Brainstorm and just get kick ass?
Or from me.
Or from
Squared.
you at Learn Squared, or, you know, Steve Jung. Yeah, I mean, Red Engine.
Shameless plug.
Learn Square. But there's, you know, as you mentioned, there's these satellite places that are quality, that people are getting, you know, great education, technique. And before, it used to be, some of these places were all about technique, but then they started incorporating design. And so I feel strongly about Art Center and what it gives you, because it gives you much more than a design education. There's a lot more to it than that. But I also feel like, listen, some of the best guys in the business, like Steve Berg and Matt Codd and those guys, they're self-taught.
Yeah.
and they're gods. And so if you
I
have,
should get Steve on this podcast too. He's
you should,
amazing. He's one of the reasons why I even started looking into 3D. Really.
he's, he's, he was one of the first guys to, that's why I use Lightwave, is because he and I are best friends, and, we came up together. And when he started using Lightwave, that's what influenced me,
Yeah.
was he was doing it in Lightwave. But it's funny because I don't know if you've seen, I haven't touched my model here, but as I model with tools. He models by number. The guy's a fucking savant. He models by numbers and he animates by numbers. He inputs
That's insane.
in X, Y, Z, and that's how he thinks. It's how he uses paint and how he used markers as well. He's just as much left brain as he is right brain.
Right.
You should have him on because his insight and his experience is stuff that you guys would want to hear. He also did the same thing. He moved back to New Jersey a couple of years ago, and it's where he was from, and for the same reasons.
Yeah. The last time I've seen him was when I was in Captain America. I think he was working for. I can't remember. I think it was Jungle Book or something like that. I can't remember exactly. He was at Warner for a little bit, and I met him over lunch.
Did it take him 20 minutes to get one sentence out like it does, or?
I can't remember. He's such a nice guy, though. He's such a nice guy.
Oh, he's
man.
the best. But
Super nice person.
You'll have I tease about all the time. You have a conversation with him, and it's going to go twice as long because it takes him forever to get a sentence out.
The best part about running a podcast when you're sort of running it yourself is just like you can do whatever the fuck you want, man.
Yeah.
And nobody can tell you like someone's like, oh, you cannot say that. You should talk with your producer. All right, let me talk to myself.
How nice is that?
Yeah, it's awesome. I love that part.
Is Learn Squared all? Is it all online, or are you brick and mortar?
Yeah, it's all online. It's me,
awesome.
me, Ash Thorpe, and Andrew Horlick, and we're building it slowly. Getting some new classes ready. We just released a month ago or two. We had this motion design class with Jorge J.R. Canest. It's amazing, man. I actually took it, and I've learned so much about animation. Damn.
So just all After Effects, or?
Yeah, it's After Effects mostly, and just his approach and how he sort of breaks down animation. After taking it, I when I watch like animated films, or when you have those animated commercials and you see like movement of some characters and maybe some motion design, you start to think about it completely different, and you can for good or for better or worse, you start to notice flaws as well.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh man, those guys were lazy.
Performance is so huge when it comes to animated. That's why at CCS it's totally different than Art Center. The entertainment track there, it's 3 tracks. There's a film track, a game track, which is more about pipeline building assets, the modeling part of it, not so much the concept design. And then there's an animation track, which is 2D animation and 3D character animation.
Right.
So, I'm chairing all of that: filmmakers, animators, performers, and designers / modelers. And boy, when you have an animator that's willing to give it up as far as how they perform, whether it's with a pencil or in the graph editor in Maya, there's a huge difference between. It's the same thing as being in front of a camera. Somebody who's willing to really give up their performance and bare their soul to their character. Kind of the same process it is when you design. They stand out. It's really cool to watch, whether it's motion graphics or character animation. There's a good animator is worth their weight in gold. It's amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. That's absolutely true. All right, man. Let's jump into some questions. There's a few
Okay.
been asked here. Let's go through them real quick. First one was, could you share with us some of the mindset qualities that helped greatly in your journey as a designer?
Well, part of it was what we were talking about, which was stay humble,
Yeah.
because nobody nobody wants to work with an asshole. so, so,
I've been
so
saying it almost every episode. Don't be an asshole.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay. So I'm just repeating shit that you. Okay. So that's actually a big part, because what I've seen in my career is that, there are people that will get hired over somebody who has more talent just because, a production designer knows they can rely on them, or that they like working with them,
Yeah.
and they know they'll deliver the goods. So 9 times out of 10, that person will get hired over somebody who's even more talented, but not dependable, or their ego gets in the way. So that was a big part of my journey. And the other part was, it's not so much work ethic, because I know everybody in this business has that hardcore work ethic. It's just expected. But it was, I guess, more just the sheer love of what I'm doing. I fucking love drawing. I love designing shit. I'm a geek. And that just translates into a work ethic where you don't mind the hours,
Yeah.
and you have to have that mindset to make it in this business, because it does own you. So that, and then also being willing to adapt. I was never, when we were talking about that transition into digital, and there were so many guys that were just like, fuck that, I'm not, I'm an artist, I'm gonna paint.
Yeah. Where are they at right now?
And so I was open to everything. So being adaptable was a big part of it too, and I always will be, whatever comes up my way for the rest of my career.
Yeah.
So I think those three things are the most important.
It's that drive, isn't it? Like anytime something new comes out, you get excited, and if you see there's a quality to it that can basically improve whatever you do at your work, that just becomes like this one really enticing thing, isn't it?
Totally. And I don't know. I just get giddy about the shit. When I look at good artwork, and I see what you guys are doing, looking at your stuff on Avengers is like, fuck, man, this guy's good. And I love it. I love looking at other guys' stuff. I love it when I produce something that makes me feel good. That just fuels you. I don't get intimidated by other great designers in this industry. I get inspired by them.
Yeah, you should feel excited about seeing what they do and trying
Totally.
to match that goal. Like, how did he do that? Like, is there a way I could do it myself? And then figuring out the road. I think that's the most exciting part, where you're trying to figure out exactly how it's done. One of the things that like anytime I'm going on Facebook and I see what Jama is doing, you know who Jama Jurabayev is?
Yeah,
You've probably
sick.
seen. So fucking, you
Sick.
see, oh yeah, he did a nice sketch, in Photoshop, and they're like, no, wait a minute, it's all 3D and it's VR and you can move around. Like, what the
Sick.
fuck? How do you do that, man?
I know, and
yeah, it's pretty insane.
That's where we're headed, by the way. I mean, tilt brush we're all going to be using tilt brush, years from now, and that's how we're going to be executing our work.
Yeah, right now it's a gimmick, but so was Photoshop in the beginning. So
yeah. I mean, it will turn into something that
for sure
becomes tangible. But yeah, I mean, that's the difference between a healthy ego and an unhealthy ego, is where instead of being intimidated by your peers, you're inspired by them. And that's how it was all the way through. My best friends are guys that I mean, I relate to other artists and designers on a different level than I do anyone else. We speak our own language,
Yeah.
and so these guys become my best friends. I mean, like Steve Berg, um, Warren Manser, Matt Cott, all these guys that we came up with together. We're all best friends.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's a
and
passion that combines, the sort of like the self-driven passion towards the art and learning. It's something that always gets people together.
Yeah, and just when we go out for a beer and talk, our discussions revolve around that stuff because
Yeah.
we breathe the shit. So, and I know you guys do too.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
the same. It's the same thing for you guys. So yeah, that's another big part that's important. That's been really important in my life is my friendships with
Yeah.
fellow peers and the memories we've got from shit that we did on movies back in the day, and so it's all good.
Yeah. To me, it's all fun until you're tired. Then it's really work.
Yeah.
That's how I view it.
Yeah.
Cool. Next question was, what do you think are the major differences about games and movies concept art making process? Basically, have you ever worked in actually have you ever worked in games before?
No.
Okay. I
I've
guess I
done
can
theme.
quickly
Yeah,
answer
you'll have to
that.
answer that one. I've done theme park work.
Yeah, how's that? I was always curious. Is it
Um,
is it is it very different to film, or you
I,
can
I
pretty much?
it's it was for me because I was an outsider. Like I did a lot of stuff for Disney Imagineering back in the '90s,
Hmm.
and I always did it as an outside contractor. I never hired in, so it was never part of their process. It was always okay. We've got this new attraction that we're working on, and we need this, and this designed. Um, and so it was kind of piece by piece. It was very different than in film. And then I recently worked on a Chinese theme park um, about 4 years ago, and that was similar to a movie in how I worked remotely with these people. It's kind of like they would send me layouts and drawings of um, their attraction and
Yeah.
what they're doing. Then I would visualize the stuff and add to it design wise, and that was pretty similar. But
Cool.
games, I haven't. I've never worked on a game.
Um, what I could tell is it's very similar. I think games have a little more. Um, there's there are some differences. I would say in most cases, technically, it's very similar. Film is more precise. It's more design oriented, where you're actually solving problems and you're actually because that's going to be built. Unless you're doing concepts that are going to be purely VFX, but
Right.
especially in the art department, you're really designing sets. So it's a work that has to translate to how it's going to be built. Like if you're designing a vehicle, for instance, they have to build it in most cases. So
Yeah.
you have to make it work somehow, one way or
Right.
another.
Right.
There's keyframes, obviously, or weapon designs. That's something that they have to build too. But keyframes is that could be more loose in terms of how far you can go with your imagination. In games, it's like it's keyframes are very similar in games as in films. In terms of designing everything else, you're abiding more to the rules of the gameplay, what's actually fun, and then trying to keep it within the realm of reality. Now,
Right.
whether it's designed over designed, I think design has less to do with the games themselves. Like, there's not as much focus on the functionality. That's why when you see sci-fi games, there's a lot of like the design can be awesome depending on who's actually designing. If it's a proper designer, like someone really good, like let's say you
Yeah.
have Mike Hill or Aaron Beck, one of the young guys young guys. They are pretty much my age. But those are considered to be like good designers, and you can tell. Like Aaron Beck is the guy who did a lot of work for Elysium and District 9. He
Oh,
kind of
sure.
designed he almost produced that feel and style of District 9
Yeah,
and
he's nuts,
Elysium.
nuts and bolts hardware guy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Um, so when he is involved, then you know that it's gonna be something special. It's almost like looking at, let's say, Daniel Simon, right?
hmm,
Like when Daniel Simon is on a film, it's gonna be probably the most beautiful film out there that year.
yeah,
Like it's just granted. Like the vehicle is probably gonna be something that as mind blowing as you've ever seen. Like just look at Oblivion or even the Tron, right? It's
yeah,
just like, come on.
yeah. His
It's the
shit's
most
amazing.
beautiful shit you've ever seen.
Yep.
Um, it's very much with games. It's very much like that with games as well. Where if you have a proper designer, someone who understands design, then it's gonna influence the look. But it's all in most cases it's gonna be driven by that person rather than our direction and whatnot. Um, Again, it's more focused towards the gameplay and the game itself. Like the most important part about games is game. Like you pick up a controller or a keyboard or whatever. It has to be fun. If it's
Yeah,
not fun, it
exactly.
doesn't matter if it looks great or not. It's just gonna be shitty. It's gonna
But
be a shitty game, right?
when guys are designing hardware within a game, are they? I'm just assuming that they're sort of um, justifying their designs as far as how things work, how
Yeah,
things. I mean, I'm because we do the same thing, and we,
it's all
doing
over
that.
the place. It can be completely all over the place. Honestly, you
Well, that's
know.
what I'm saying. I mean, like doing the helicarrier for Captain America, the Winter Soldier, not Civil War, the one you worked
Hmm.
on. I mean, you can ask me anything about it, any area of that helicarrier, and I can tell you about it. I can
Yeah,
justify it. But obviously, the shit doesn't work. But to make things believable, you think through stuff and you use existing technology to incorporate into your design so that it
yeah.
becomes believable. And I'm just assuming you guys do that in games as well.
To a degree. Again, like when you look at some of the sci-fi games, there's just, I mean, it's all over the place. It can be,
Yeah.
it's a good, it's a bad, it's more bad than good. uh, it's like it's a art station concept art good in most cases. You know what I mean?
Okay. Okay.
It's like a concepty concept. Like there's
Okay.
a saying in video games, concept wires, which basically means that you have to like putting wires in your illustration where they go from the camera towards the center of the image, or
Uh-huh.
towards the image, because it builds the depth.
Okay.
So it's that kind of thinking process.
Yeah.
In
Gotcha.
most cases, I'm not saying in all cases. I guess I'll give you a good example how when the things are done right, and I know it's going to be sort of like a really shameless way of saying it, but I would say The Last of Us was done
Mm-hmm.
right. And the
Yeah.
only reason I would say, or one of the major reasons it was done right, is because of Bruce Straley, who was a game director, but he's
Mm-hmm.
also a great art director. He paints himself, like he paints in oils. He understands art. He reads art books. He studies art in general. So he has a
Yeah.
great understanding about perspective, about architecture, about colors, about pretty much everything. He
Right.
understands what he sees. Um, and he's very particular about details as well, and understanding where the details are coming from. So even when we're doing environments, and it's just like you think it's abandoned, I don't know, abandoned mall, right, or some kind of abandoned room or something like that. There's always attention to detail where, all right, if you're adding trash, like where does this trash is coming from? Like you're not,
Justify it.
yeah, justify it, justification of how it's collapsing, and then analyzing actually how buildings are structured and where it would start collapsing. All right, if there's a
Yeah.
water leak, where the water leak would come from, and then justifying it, and then making it dressed in a way that it feels right. So when you play The Last of Us, it's not like everything is all over the place. Everything seems to feel very normal. In
There's
most
there's a
cases.
that makes a difference, man. I mean, I look at this guy that's the production designer on Avengers. He's one of those detail-oriented guys that I was talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a big difference in how his films look. I mean, he did Doctor Strange, he did Guardians of the Galaxy, and there's depth to the films he's worked on because he's one of those guys that you're describing.
Yeah, yeah,
And it makes a difference. I mean, it does. I mean, it's his sets are believable in a way that some guys' sets aren't.
yeah. I
You know,
agree.
so
But
as
yeah,
much
I
of a
think I think in film it's more uh, oriented towards solving problems in a realistic way, or
yeah,
in a way that it's gonna work. Because it just
right,
in most cases it just has to be built, and that's already by a default. It just has to work. So
yeah, for sure.
cool. I'm gonna read one more,
All
and
right,
then we can wrap it up.
you got it.
Or actually, there's two more questions only. So let's blast through them.
We'll
So
answer them.
first one is
We'll answer
serving
them
parts.
quick.
Yeah. Team, your work is great. The ships in Winter Soldier are so cool. There you go. Do you still remember your industrial design training after so long? What is a book about industrial design that the best helped you in your design work? And finally, what are some tips you can give to other artists to how to design cool entertainment design?
Wow, those are cool questions. Well, first of all, thanks for the compliment. That's good to hear. And yes, my industrial design roots are they're just it's my DNA in doing everything. It's how I think. It's how it's how Daniel Simon thinks. Um, it's how Steve Burke thinks, even though he's not a trained industrial designer. He just is because that's who he is. So um, when it comes to proportion, when it comes to dominance, subdominance, rhythm, harmony, balance, those 5 key elements of design,
Mm-hmm.
that's whether I'm doing a character or a costume or hardware or architecture, those 5 elements come into play in everything I do. As far as books goes, I can't really recommend any books. I would more recommend exercises that I teach, where you get influenced by what nature gives you for free. So the way I teach is I'll drop ink and water and photograph it, and then create the architecture from what I get out of the battle of resistance of ink and water,
Mm-hmm.
and what nature gives you for free, or I'll simply use splines from a ruler to see how a natural line accelerates and the apex of acceleration off that line. Those are the things. So I guess what I'm saying to answer the question is that you just need to be a student of nature, because that's what good industrial design comes from, and studying nature will be better than reading any book.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, that's an easy answer for me. So try dropping ink in water and watch what it gives you for free, and then see what you can get out of it. You get great line, you get great volume, you get great proportion, because nature's perfect.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. I mean, it's observation and
Yep.
experiences you take out of them. It's like when you learn about lighting, when you learn about perspective and composition, you learn it by looking at nature, or looking at observing, basically.
Yeah.
How are you going to learn about natural light? By observing it, seeing how light and how sun is affecting surfaces and how
Yeah.
it's reflecting and all that. And I guess it's pretty much similar with designs. It feels ambiguous, but once you understand that there are rules, like you said, rhythm, or the
Hmm.
scale, and whatnot, then you start to apply observation to what those rules, which are very vague, by the way, say, and
Yeah.
yeah,
I
agree.
lecture about it where I I give photographic examples of what balance is, of what rhythm is, of what harmony is, of what dominance and subdominance are, because those make up composition, they make up design, they make up relationships. They go into everything. So
Mm-hmm.
so like in my concept class, that's the first day of class is I do the lecture on visualizing those 5 elements of design and what they look like, so that students know how to apply them when they're doing a piece of hardware, or know how to apply them when they're composing a keyframe. And you could even to this person who asked the question, you can Google those 5 elements: dominance, subdominance, rhythm, harmony, balance, and then go to Google Images, and you're there's going to be a light bulb that goes off in your head.
Yeah.
And that's a good place to start, really,
Yeah.
for that
Exploration.
path. Yeah, that path down industrial design, and which leads to concept design. It's a good place to start.
Cool. And the last one is there's actually two more, but or three more. One we kind of answered already, and
Okay.
two others could be combined actually into one question, which is what I'm gonna do. How can you get a break into a movie industry when you come from video games industry? Something I can probably start with, and something you can obviously add to. What does director from movies are looking for? And then was another one which is very related, I would say, is how do you approach, possibly for the first time ever, a movie studio about a project you hear that is planned and you would like to be part of it? Is it even possible? Um, I think it's like I think this could be one question really.
Yeah.
Let me
You
start.
want? Yeah, you
Yeah,
go first.
I'll start really quickly and then we can elaborate from there. In order to work in films, I would say easiest answer to any of those questions is your portfolio is going to speak for itself. And oftentimes you're gonna say, all right, you have to know people, you have to know a certain amount of directors or production designer or producer or someone in order to actually get into the movie industry, which is true. But the best way to get discovered is to basically make as best art as you can, and they'll find you. Like if you make something that is truly inspiring, trust me, they'll find your work. That's how I got found. Like I didn't know anyone from the movie industry, and the first person I spoke with, or one of the first person I spoke with, was Robert Rodriguez, and the art that he saw was one of the images I did like way back when, which was it was called Dark Riders. Those two horsemen, like those two Nazguls, very cinematic look. That was the image that I was like, shit, I gotta talk with that guy, So this is where it started for me. Usually, it's your art that's going to speak for itself. Obviously, when you like, if you went to art center, you're gonna know a lot of artists. A lot of them might end up working in film, and they will recommend you. So having a good connections helps. In order to have good connections, you just have to be, we talked about it. You cannot be an asshole. You have to have your ego in check. So, but I think the most important part, or most interesting part about this, because I already talked. I think if you go back, I can't remember which stream was that. If you go back a couple of streams, I think when I was talking with Scott Schneider, I've mentioned this a couple of times. On how to get in a union and what it entails. You can actually go on the Art Directors Guild side. There's usually I think there's an information about how to get in. In many cases, when you actually get a chance to work in a movie, when someone contacts you about the movie, that's when you're gonna get all the information you need. It's just gonna snowball from there. I think the best part of this question is that, like, let's say you hear about the film, like, oh shit, the Blade Runner is in works, and I want to be part of it. Or how do I get, director or production designer to actually see my work? So I don't know, like, I have my ideas, but I would love to hear your opinions about this as
Um,
well.
sure. You want me to go, or are you gonna?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this question is being asked in the exact same manner that I asked it when I was 20 years old, and the answer to it is you contact people. There is, even though there's a shitload of talent out there, and our industry and what we do has exploded. There's always, if you're good, you're going to work. There's always room for talent. So if you hear of a project that is going on and you contact, this has been my experience, and you contact the production designer, or for some reason you know how to contact the director or whatever, and you send them a link to your work, they're going to look at it. They're always looking for new talent or different talent, unique talent. So if you're unique and you stand out above other people for whatever reason, because your characters are great, or because you have a different take on hardware, or you're the new Daniel Simon because of how you refine Surface so well, you're going to get noticed and you'll work. They're looking for you. There's been plenty of production designers that I've worked with that they'll say, hey, who do you know coming up that's really good? And I'll say, oh, Charlie Farquhar from so-and-so, you got to see his stuff. So part of what Mache is saying is true as well, which is people are going to recommend you as you get to know. But the first step is have a website or at least a blog, and email these people and point them to your work. I guarantee you 100% they're going to look at your work. Even if they don't know who you are, they'll look. People love looking at artwork.
They might not necessarily reply, but they'll definitely look.
They're gonna look. And if you're good and your timing's right, and they need somebody with what you have to offer, they'll contact you.
Yeah,
I've seen it happen over and over and over again. It happened to me early in the days, back in the '80s, and it still works the same exact way today. It's just easier because of the digital, they can see your work right away. I mean, my days were lugging in gigantic portfolios and showing them, 30 by 40 paintings, and, having to meet with them face to face, which was much, much tougher to actually cold call somebody and convince them to see you. Where now you just point them to your blog, they don't have to meet you. They're going to look at your work, and if they like you, they'll email you back.
Yeah. Be realistic about yourself too. Like, be realistic about your work. Just look at it, and then I would say
look at what the professionals are doing out there that are established, and if you compare to them, then it's worth pointing somebody to your website. If you don't, then keep working.
Yeah. Like, if your work is shitty, and just on it, like, if you give yourself an honest assessment, if you can compare yourself to work of the guys who already work in the industry, you see those names, and they've been working on the film A, B, C, then your chances of actually breaking through are much better than if you just have something that is just average or not inspiring at all. Honestly, maybe it's lacking still a lot of polish, or it's lacking quality. It's very unlikely you're gonna hear back. It's not gonna burn any bridges. It's not gonna be like, oh, fuck that guy, he contacted me 2 years ago, his work was shitty, so I'm not gonna look at it anymore. But just be realistic, and also bear in mind that you don't want to be a person that spams people either. I just want to put some caveats in this, because you never know who's listening, and who, like, oh shit, I'm gonna contact that production designer and spam him with my work. That's the best way to never get hired, actually.
Yeah, exactly. No, you have to. That's a good point. You have to be delicate about how you go about it. One, you want to make sure your work is ready to show people.
Yeah.
Because you will risk the chance of blowing it. If you don't impress them the first time, they may not look again. So you have to be careful about that. And then you also have to be careful about how you go about contacting people, where, you don't come on too strong. that that you contact people in a way that invites them to look at your stuff as opposed to being pushy.
Yeah. Don't write a director and say, "Hey, dude, can you look at my work, please?" That's it's a no-no.
You'd be surprised how many people do that too.
Yeah.
And yeah,
We've been talking about this in my previous stream with, I think it was with James Pake actually. How do you go about contacting video game studios and making sure
right.
that your work's going to be at least looked at? And he said, like, I think it was him. He said, you would be surprised how many people just never follow what HR sets in their description that you should do. Or I think it was either him or maybe it was Alex from Naughty Dog. I can't remember. But either way, you get those portfolios that are like, you have a strict guidelines. Just follow
Right.
it. Just follow it. Don't don't be a guy who's just like, I can wing it. It never works. Like, if you just draw something out there and you half-ass it, bear in mind people will half-ass response to you as well. It's like, yeah, whatever. But if you
Right.
really, if you really go careful about it and you really push effort towards presenting yourself from best possible angle, and your work speaks for itself, the chances are that you might actually get hired. And when that happens, it can snowball. So,
Yeah.
but
And
yeah,
the competition's too stiff to not pay attention.
yeah,
It's just there's too many people out there who are really good and really talented. So if you're going to get noticed by, I don't care, Naughty Dog or Riot or whoever, you better, to your point, you better make sure
it blows
that
my mind, man. Sometimes, like, the emails I saw, I had a chance to look at some of the submissions for Naughty Dog. It was just like, holy shit, man! It just blows my mind. Like, how? Like, I'm thinking it from a perspective, like, would you go to a grocery store that has an open position for a cashier and present yourself that way? You probably wouldn't. And I
right,
saw some of the ways people are trying to get in. It's just like, God damn it.
really.
How lazy can you be?
Yeah, and it's not like, I always use this one example, like you want to be the guy that you don't give them a choice. They have to hire you,
Yeah.
because of your portfolio, two, how you present yourself, three, how you apply all those things, because I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen at Art Center. A few years back, DreamWorks had just laid off 500 people, and they were going through those cutbacks, and we had our grad show, and they came in and they made an offer to a guy. I mean, he didn't give him a choice. They had to offer him, and they weren't hiring. In fact, they were laying people off, and they hired him because they didn't want anybody else to get him. So it's kind of like you want to be that good, and you want to go about how you do this that well as well. So that's what you need to have in your mind. Don't give them a choice, but that they have to hire you because your shit's so good and you present yourself so well.
Yeah, it's meritocracy, isn't it?
It is.
Your
Yeah.
work speaks for itself, and it's always like that. It's the reality of the world, and you have to
Yep.
accept it. And if you feel if you feel butthurt about it, then then this industry is not for you.
Did you say butthurt?
Yeah.
That's so good. I'm stealing that, man.
That's a pretty popular saying
Well,
among the interwebs.
you're talking to I'm a sheltered, delicate flower.
All right.
Butthurt. We're gonna end it on that. That's perfect.
Yeah, let's end it on that. Dude, it was a pleasure, man. We should do it again
Likewise.
one time.
Likewise.
I wanted to end up this year because I'm gonna go on the hiatus. I'm planning vacation time with my family, a little bit of sabbatical. Wrapping up some work. I just need to sort of slow down because I've been sprinting for the last couple of years without almost any time off. So I figured, you're gonna be a perfect guest, and this is gonna be a great conversation to have to sort of wrap it up, and so we can come back strong next year with the art Cafe. Dude, thanks for your time. We actually went a little bit over time than we normally do, so really, really appreciate that you had you spared that time with us and with the audience and everyone who was listening or watching it later on. Yeah, man, it was a
Yeah, man.
pleasure.
Hey, this was fun for me, and it's I've been wanting to shoot the shit with you anyway, and this is a great excuse to do it. And thanks for having me on your last one before your hiatus. Well deserved, and enjoy, recharge.
Yeah, I have to.
For
All right,
sure.
guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching it. If you liked it, subscribe. If not, then go fuck yourself. Or do whatever you want, man. Do whatever you want. We're doing this for you guys. So,
Yeah.
again, thanks for everyone. Thanks, Tim, and we'll wrap it up with. I just cannot resist putting some soundboard there.
Yeah. Put it in.
Some cool music. Wrap it up on the positive note, and have you guys have a great holidays and take care.
All right. We'll see you, Machi.
Yep. Bye bye.